viewers, welcome to another video on the series of control charts. In this video, we are going to understand about the third control chart that we are going to draw for continuous data, which is also called as variable data. In our previous videos, we have seen about IMR chart or XMR chart, and in another video, we have seen about X bar R chart, which is control chart for continuous data, but the data is collected in the form of subgroup and subgroup size is less than 8. In this video, we are going to understand about the X bar S chart, which is again control chart for continuous data, but the subgroup size is greater than 8. Let's see how this chart will be useful. As I was explaining, X bar S chart, that is average and standard deviation chart, is a chart used for continuous data where the data is collected in the form of subgroup. However, your subgroup size is greater than 8. So the number of data points you collect in each subgroup is greater than 8. Let's understand this with the help of this example. So this is samples collected in a tire manufacturing company. So every hour the tire they manufacture, the weight of the tire is getting measured. And how many samples we are taking every hour? Every hour we are taking totally 10 samples. As you see here, these are 10 samples collected for first hour. These are 10 samples collected for second hour. So every hour we collect 10 samples. So samples are collected in the form of subgroup, but the subgroup size is greater than 8. Hence, instead of X bar R chart, we are going to draw X bar S chart. So those who have seen my previous video on X bar R chart, pretty much we are going to use the same method of plotting the chart. The only difference is the control chart constants are going to be different this time, and instead of a range of subgroup, we are going to plot standard deviation of subgroup. So let's see how this chart can be plotted. Step number 1, as I told, collect your data points in the form of subgroup. Every hour is my subgroup definition, and 10 data point or subgroup size of 10. So that is my number of samples. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the average of my subgroup. As you see here, these are my 10 data points. So if I apply average formula and select these 10 data points, what I get is X bar, or in other words, average of my subgroup. So what I get here is average of my subgroup. So I can copy this and I can paste this on all my cells in my table so that I get my individual values for my X bar chart. So let's make it into 3 digits. Now I have to calculate standard deviation for my subgroup. In our previous X bar R chart, we were calculating range for subgroup at this point. Now we are going to calculate standard deviation of the subgroup. So how do we do this? I say is equal to STD. So as you see here, there are two formulas available: standard deviation of population, standard deviation of sample. We are going to use standard deviation of sample formula, and we are going to select these 10 data points. This will give us standard deviation for the subgroup, or standard deviation for these 10 data points for the subgroup. I'm going to copy and paste this formula for all the cells in my table to get individual standard deviation values. So we got the individual value for the X bar chart. We also got the individual values for the standard deviation chart. Now we will calculate the central line for the X bar chart. As we saw before, central line for X bar chart is nothing but the X double bar. Here what you see is X bar, average of subgroup. X double bar is nothing but average of all the individual X bars, or in other words, it is the average of subgroup averages. So I say is equal to average, and then I select my subgroup averages. So what I get is X double bar. So this X double bar is going to be a straight line in my control chart. Hence I refer this particular value and take it to all my cells. So this value will be repeated so that it becomes a straight line. Similarly, I have to calculate my average of standard deviation, subgroup standard deviation. So what I do, I say is equal to, I put the average formula, then I select my standard deviation values. This is my average of standard deviation, which is S bar. So this is again going to be a straight line. So this is the central line for my standard deviation chart. So I refer this value to all the slides or all the cells in my table. And now we have to calculate the control limits. So as I told it before, people who have seen my previous video on X bar R chart, the control limit formula in that particular chart is X double bar plus A2 times of R bar. That used to be the formula. Here the formula is slightly different. X double bar plus open brackets. Here instead of R bar, we are going to select S bar. And S bar, the constant is going to be A3. So here we have introduced the three new columns for this X bar S chart, which is A3, B3 and B4 value. So my sample size is 10. So here I have 10 and the value I have to select is A3. So I select this particular value and I close my bracket. So what I have done now is X double bar plus A3 times of S bar. That is X double bar is nothing but average of subgroup averages. So that is a central line. So the central line value plus A3 times of average of the subgroup standard deviation. So that is the value I see here. So simply, so this is my X double bar. This is the average of subgroup standard deviations. So I am taking A3 times of my n is equal to 10. So n is equal to 10, A3 value will be 0.975. So that's the value that I'm taking. So again, this is going to be a straight line. So let me refer this to all the cells in my table. And again, the formula for lower control limit is going to be the same. So instead of plus, I'm going to use the minus sign. So let me copy the formula, paste it here, change the sign from plus to minus. Again, refer this value and then copy paste it for all these cells in your table. So now we have got the control limits for your X bar chart. Now we will draw the control limits for our S chart. Sorry, so let me change it. It's for S chart. And the formulas are also going to be B4 and B3 from the constant table. So let me change it. It is not D4, it's actually B4 and B3. So the formula is, this is my R bar. Just a minute, let me change the formula. It's not R bar, it's actually S bar because we are drawing standard deviation chart. Just a minute. Right. So here I have my S bar. So B4 times of my S bar. So here I have B4 and B4 for n is equal to 10. So B4 times of my R bar and this value will be B3 times, right? So I select S bar, multiplication, I select B3 with n is equal to 10. So I select this value. Friends, let me make it very clear. So the formula is B4 times of S bar. So I have my S bar value here, B4 for n is equal to 10, right? So that's why we have taken this value. Similarly, S bar multiplied by B3 times for n is equal to 10. So that's why we have taken this value. So again, these two values should be a straight line in my control chart. So I'm going to refer this and I'm going to refer this also. Now I can copy paste this. For our convenience, we will make all these values for 4 decimals so that it becomes easy for us to understand. So let me make it to 4 decimals. Okay. So now let's first draw the X bar chart. So here is my X bar individual values. I am pressing the control key and now my X double bar will be my central line, upper control limit for my X bar chart and lower control limit for my X bar chart. So I have selected these 4 values. I click on insert and I select this particular graph. So I get my X bar chart. Let me rename this. This is my X bar chart. Okay. X bar chart. Let me copy paste it here. Now let me draw my S chart, which is my standard deviation chart. So for that, my individual standard deviation values are here. I hold the control key. My just a minute, sorry. My individual standard deviation values are here. My S bar, which is the central line for my S chart, is here. My upper control limit for my S chart and lower control limit for my S chart. Now I click on insert and I can select the line chart and I can select this, and this will be my S chart, which is my standard deviation chart. Let me take this chart also here. Okay, how do we interpret this chart? What are we trying to interpret this chart? What we are trying to interpret is my subgroup average shifting. What do I mean by subgroup average shifting? For example, if you see, this is my subgroup average overall average, which is my X double bar. So with respect to this central line, what is the movement of my subgroup averages? And if you see, the subgroup averages in some cases very close to this central line, in some cases very far away from the central line. For example, if you see here, in the third data point, my subgroup average is significantly far away from the central line. On that particular subgroup, if you see what is the standard deviation, the standard deviation is slightly above. So there is high variation as well as the average is drifting. And sometimes if you see here, there is high variation on the other side, but the standard deviation is dropping. As I was explaining before, if my subgroup average is far away from the center line of the X bar chart, that means there is a process shift. Process is significantly changing. Something is happening in the process which is making the metric to significantly move away from its center line. When the X bar chart or the X bar data point is moving significantly away from the center line, but parallelly, if the standard deviation is very low, that means the entire subgroup there is some problem we need to investigate. If the standard deviation is high, within the group also there is a lot of variation. So within that 2 hour period or 1 hour period, there are some data points operating at a different level. There are some data point operating at a different level. So that requires a different kind of an investigation. So the average of the subgroup deviating from its center line tells you a story. At the same time, the standard deviation of the subgroup, is it closer to the center line or very low or very high, tells a completely different story about that particular data point. So that is the very important interpretation that we need to make when we draw a X bar S chart. Same is applicable for the X bar R chart also. Now we will see how to draw this control chart using Minitab. So let me go to Minitab. So I have already copy pasted this data in Minitab. I have copy pasted it in two ways. One, in the form of subgroup, like you see here, the first row represents one subgroup data. The second row represents the next subgroup data. So I have copy pasted the data in this format. I have also copy pasted the data in another format where the data is one below the other. So Minitab have the capability of drawing X bar S chart for both these scenarios. So let me click on stat. Let me click on control charts. Control chart for variable data subgroup. So last time we saw X bar R chart. This time we are going to click on X bar S chart. So in X bar S chart, again there will be a drop down where there will be two options. All observations of the chart are in one column. Observations of subgroup are in one row of a column. So I'm going to select this, and here I'm going to select N1, N2, N3, N4, N5, N6, N7, N8, N9, and N10. So these are 10 data points for 15 subgroups that we have collected. And now I can click on X bar S options. I can go to test. I can have all these test points checked. So I have already clearly explained what is these checkpoints are. So not only we are going to check whether the data point is going outside the control limits, but we are going to also check various other statistical abnormalities like continuous data points in increasing and decreasing direction, more than 3 data points, that is uh, 2 out of 3 data points beyond 2 standard deviation, 4 out of 5 data points beyond one standard deviation, 15 data points um, within one standard deviation from the center line, 8 data points uh, greater than one standard deviation from the. So all these are different statistical abnormalities that Minitab will check this data for. So I have put a check mark on all these options. Now I click OK. Then I click OK. I get the control chart. Pretty much the same control chart that we saw using the Excel file. So let me copy and paste this control chart here so that it becomes easy for us to compare both the control charts. Just a minute. So let me paste it here. You can see almost the same control chart that we have constructed using Excel is the result that we are getting from Minitab. But what is the benefit of doing it in Minitab? As I told in all my previous videos, we will be able to make a lot of inference out of a control chart when we draw it using a statistical application like Minitab. It will tell you what kind of test the data is failing and what data points are failing. So it gives you a complete summary, and this becomes easy for you to make interpretation and again take actions. So now let me press Control E, and instead of drawing it this way, let me draw it the other way where the data points are one below the other. So now I select this, and in the subgroup I give 10 as my subgroup size. So what is the meaning of giving 10 here? The meaning of giving 10 is the first 10 data points are from one subgroup, the next 10 data points is from other subgroup. That is the information that we are giving to Minitab. And when we click OK, exactly the same control chart can be constructed again. So hope this video was useful, friends. Let me quickly summarize it for you. The control chart that we saw in this video is X bar S chart, that is subgroup average and subgroup standard deviation chart. When do we use it? We use it for continuous data where the data is collected in the form of subgroup, but the subgroup size is greater than 8. If at all the subgroup size is less 8 or less than 8, we would have gone for X bar R chart. And if the samples are collected one after the other, we would have gone for IMR chart, individual moving range chart. Since the subgroup size is greater than 8, we are going for X bar S chart. So in X bar S chart, we collect samples in the form of subgroup, then we calculate subgroup average, we calculate subgroup standard deviation. And once we have these two information, then we calculate the center line by calculating X double bar, which is nothing but average of subgroup averages. We calculate S bar, which is nothing but average of subgroup standard deviations. These are two central lines for our chart. And once we have calculated this, then we need to calculate the control limits. So for control limit for X bar chart, the formula is X double bar plus A3 times of S bar, which is nothing but average of standard deviation. And A3 is nothing but control chart constant, which is available in the control chart constants table. And same X double bar minus A3 times of S bar will give you the lower control limit. And similarly for control limits for the S chart, the formula is D3 times of S bar will be your lower control limit, and D4 times of your S bar will be your upper control limit. And once we construct this, then we can plot the chart and we can make our results and interpretation out of the chart. Hope this video was useful, friends. So these are the three important charts. IMR, X bar R and X bar S are the three important charts that we use for continuous data. So as a series of control charts, there are few other charts that we need to see, which I will be covering in my upcoming videos. Hope this video was useful for you to understand the X bar S chart, which is nothing but subgroup average and subgroup standard deviation chart. Thanks for your time. For more videos on control charts, Minitab tools and techniques, and quality management tools, please subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.